Hi everyone, I hope you had a good holidays, I certainly did. Today I thought I'd just do a quick video since we haven't posted in a while on some of the finer details on technically cutting with the Polish Saber. For this video I'll be using my very expensive, very nice Hussar Saber, and as I don't have any tatami mats pre-soaked, we're going to have to settle for cutting one of these ever ready $2 Kmart pool noodles. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. Right now, as anyone who's practiced any saber techniques knows, essentially most systems use a basic 6 directional cut system, as in there's 6 basic directions for cutting. Now, this doesn't change, however, how the cuts are delivered along those lines tends to vary from school to school. Now, there is a very basic, very good way of cutting that is extremely powerful using the shoulder muscles, the hands, and a fixed grip. You might think of it as a kind of draw cut. A lot of British military systems seem to cut this way, and I'll demonstrate how it basically goes. Essentially, you start raised high, you have the wrist in line, and then basically you just slice through like that. Now, this cut can be very powerfully delivered, especially if you step forward and slice, put everything into it, your full body weight. And when you want to test the blade, you don't want to test your technique, you're not sparring, you just want to see how well a particular sword can cut. This is a go-to method because you eliminate all the variables that might come from poor technique if you're trying to do something more elaborate and more technically correct. Now, this style here is very easy to learn, a lot of people do it and it works. However, when you're doing sparring, we can do some more advanced cutting that uses not so much the shoulder as much, but more the fingers and the elbow in unique ways. So I'm going to try and demonstrate a little bit of this today for those of you who have been interested in some of the finer techniques for Polish Saber. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with cutting this way. It's the easiest way to cut, is a extremely powerful way to cut. Traditionally, sabers were used with cavalry. If you're riding your horse down and you just slice that guy as you ride past, there's nothing at all wrong with that. And cutting this way with a fixed grip, using the shoulder to drive it through the target, that is what I would recommend when you're cutting with a new blade and you just want it, you're not testing your technique, you're just testing the blade itself and you want to remove all variables. That would be the way to go. And also, if you're not cutting these pool noodles with something rather difficult like a tatami mat, then I'll suggest a fixed grip and just try and use your whole arm and get through the target, because that is a test of power. However, when you're sparring, you might want to use a more nuanced technique. Now, this one here, obviously you're a bit open as you come forward and it's a bit telegraphed. Now, the cuts I'm going to talk about today primarily use the fingers to drive the motion and the elbow, not so much the shoulder. The shoulder's obviously involved, the whole body's involved, muscles in the waist and the stomach are involved. However, the key ingredient is the fingers. So, we can relax the grip with the lower 2 fingers, especially 3, I guess you could say. Now, the pinky finger must always remain in contact just down here at the bottom of the handle. It's this style of motion here. So your index finger and thumb, if you've got one using a thumb ring, this works perfectly fine. They secure the sword and withdraw it, and the pinky finger drives it forward into the target. Now we add to that, the wrist is rotated, so we're throwing it this way like this. Ooh, not yet really going to cut it, but we'll do it in a moment. So the finger drives the motion. This is not using the arm muscles at all, just the finger and the wrist. So flat blade towards your opponent and then rotate and go through. Now obviously this takes a bit more concentration than just swinging with the arm. It's a bit hard to learn, but there are some advantages to this technique. Now I'll show you how it looks when we do the full technique. So we're starting back here and like that. Now the advantages of this technique are that it's less open and less telegraphed. and it delivers quicker. You might say, now you're sacrificing a bit of power, obviously. Now you might ask yourself, well, how's that? Well, basically, if you imagine if you're here, my whole arm moves and brings the blade down if I'm doing a classic draw cut using primarily my shoulder. And by the time I've gone through, then I rotate and might cut a second time. Nothing wrong with that. However, when we're doing it with the fingers, from here, before I start anything else whatsoever, we're already this close to the target. So the pivot point has already been created here, like this. Then the elbow is very important here. The elbow stays in and behind the blade. It's not out and it's not in front of the blade like this. If you stand like this to your opponent, they can slice along your forearm up to your elbow and it's just right out their forearm. So we stand back here relaxed, almost like you're getting ready to punch this dude. The elbow's down and back. So as we use our fingers to begin driving the blade forward, you push with your elbow, almost like you're throwing a strike forward. Now the shoulder, you can push straight ahead, or you can pull down the shoulder at the last moment to add more power. And obviously, you tighten the fingers, then loosen them to withdraw it for your next strike, especially if you're cross-cutting. So as you can see from this cut here, there is no wind up, there is no telegraphing. It's just straightforward, like that. Now, when I say telegraphing, for those who don't understand that term, it's primarily from boxing, as in, if I'm going to hit you and I go like this, then I punch, your chances of dodging are incredibly good. However, I just stand here and punch from where my hand is, no telegraphing, I do not signal to you I'm going to do, I do not wind up, then it is a lot better, a lot more successful. So, to recap, very classic way, you see a lot of guys doing cut testing do this simply because it's the most powerful way to get a good cut, and the easiest way, they'll have a fixed grip, they will step forward, they'll bring their arm forward, their shoulder, and then right then, bang, cut through the target. However, when you think about that, what I've actually done is, I've stepped, brought my arm, and everything comes before the actual cut. So every motion that I do happens before I actually deliver the blade to the target. That gives, if you're sparring with someone, that gives them all that time to prepare their defense. However, this may be a very stupid way to think of it. This is the way I think of it personally. But when you're using your fingers and you're punching with the elbow forward, it's like I'm thinking I've got a gun, I'm pulling the trigger. So nothing happens till I've pulled the trigger, even if you step forward. Everything comes after you pull the trigger. So anyway, in conclusion, I'm no expert, but I hope I've given you some food for thought with regards to Polish Saber techniques. Now, as I said, doing a big cut, fixed wrist with the shoulder and stepping through might be a great way to get through a hard target like a tatami mat. And it's a very good way to test the blade itself because it is a consistent way of cutting. You're not going to get any unnecessary twisting doing this very simple technique. And you can use that in fighting, especially if you've displaced their blade and you see an opening for one of these more larger techniques. However, the techniques which are the fastest and hit the target quickest are cutting with the fingers, because it's the exact reverse. Instead of stepping forward, winding up and cutting, which you've given the opponent every movement except the cut to see you're coming, without telegraphing, you pull the trigger, your arm goes, your body goes, everything follows the blade. So the first thing that moves is the blade. It's the quickest, you follow it in, and they've literally got the time from the blade starts moving till it hits them to react. So that therefore is the quickest way to get them. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Like I said, I'm no expert. If I can help you out with a few techniques, I'm glad to do so. Do widzenia.